No Maverick has ever played like he did in that first half. The man covered every inch of the floor. He did everything you can possibly do on a basketball court. He might as well have put the rim that Houston was shooting at in his pocket because they
Yeah.
didn't know how to get there when he was in the way. I mean, he was so impressive. And then to sustain an injury in the third quarter, I mean, you're just sitting there thinking, what kind of horror movie is this?
What is up, everybody, and welcome to a weekend mini pod edition of the All NBA show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. As we always do on these weekends, we join in our good friend Marc Stein from DLLS Mavs, as well as his own Substack, the Stein Line, where you can read all of the latest rumors and reports around the scuttlebutt around the NBA. Marc, we haven't talked for, 2 weeks or so, and the entire landscape of the NBA has shifted, and that shift, the fault line of that shift is right there through Dallas. Obviously, we're going to get into some of the details of the trade and the fallout, but I want to start by asking you about Anthony Davis, because he comes over. He had one of the best debuts like a traded player can have for a half, and then he gets injured in the second half. So what is the latest on that injury? What are the fears? What are the concerns? And what is being discussed right now about that injury?
Yes, I mean, you described it well because, look, I live in a city that just keeps the basketball public in this city is just asking, when will we stop getting hit in the face? When does this end? When do the gut punches stop? Because, I mean, you are right. As devastated as the locals were to find out that Luka Doncic was traded in the middle of the night on a weekend without warning. You know, Anthony Davis, the Mavericks decision makers, fondness for Anthony Davis, their desire to get Anthony Davis was a huge part of it. And after all the noise and shock and anger and just the reaction that was as wild as we've seen for a long, long time, Anthony Davis came out a week ago on February 8th against Houston, and you said it exactly right. That debut, the first quarter was the best I had ever seen him play.
It
I've been
really
covering
was.
I've been covering the Mavericks for a long time, nearly 30 years living here. No Maverick has ever played like he did in that first half. The man covered every inch of the floor. He did everything you can possibly do on a basketball court. He might as well have put the rim that Houston was shooting at in his pocket because they
Yeah.
didn't know how to get there when he was in the way. I mean, he was skying for rebounds as high as anyone I've ever seen over the square. I mean, he was so impressive. And then to sustain an injury in the third quarter, I mean, you're just sitting there thinking, what kind of horror movie is this? Like, this is
Yeah.
indescribable to see this happen. And obviously, he has an injury history. I'm not acting like he's never been injured before, but like
Right.
for it to happen, they couldn't even get through a game without incident. And look, I reported it during Super Bowl Sunday that suddenly there was this fear within the organization that this is going to be an indefinite injury. And here we are recording this 5 days removed from the Super Bowl, 5, 6 days. There is still very little known about this injury. The Mavericks have not announced a recovery timetable. The Mavericks have not announced a firm treatment course on this thing. They've not been reported either. I mean, he is out indefinitely. He is out indefinitely. No one can tell you when he's coming back at this point. There are estimates. Look, there was an undeniable hope, tangible hope around this team this week that he's not going to need surgery, but we still don't know exactly how long it's going to be. The expectation is that he is going to come back this season, but when that's going to be, how long it's going to take, we are still operating without much data, much definition. So, Yeah. I mean,
Like,
it's only,
well, real quick, what is the surgery option? Because I know they were saying that was the issue. Like, is this an injury? Like, the best that you understand the injury and what's going on, is
that's
it a
one of the,
thing that he should get surgery, but maybe he can delay it till later on?
but we don't know what grade adductor strain this is. And I do not
Mm.
want to pretend I'm a medical expert here, but to the best of my understanding, if it's a grade 2 adductor strain, he can recover without surgery. If it's a grade 3, that is typically when surgery is necessary. So the specific grade of the strain has not been revealed and has not yet emerged through reporting. I mean, I talked to
Man.
a source this week that is as close to this thing as I can get, and all I could get that is reportable at this point is there is no timetable. I do think that's intentional, by the way, that they're trying not to put a specific time scale on it, but there is no timetable beyond both the Mavericks and Davis's camp agreeing they're going to proceed with extreme caution here. You know, the
Right.
expectation is that we are going to see him at some point after the All-Star break, but specifically when, I mean, there is not a target date circulating yet.
Well, the irony of this is that Nico Harrison, part of it was he wanted to play big, right? It was defense, but also there's a size. You look at the size in the NBA. Well, Lively's out for quite a while, probably all the way up till near the playoffs. Now Anthony Davis is out, and now Gafford goes down, and he has his own injury that's going to keep him out for a while. What's the latest on Gafford? And what's plan? I guess this is Plan D. Plan A, B, and C is out, so now we're on Plan D.
I mean, they don't even have Dwight Powell, who is
Plan E.
who is now the longest tenured Maverick in the wake of the
Yeah.
Doncic. And Dwight Powell is always known for being ready to play, ready to go in, ready to take on any role they throw at him. They haven't had Dwight Powell for the last 14 games. Gafford, it emerged late Thursday night after one of the craziest things. It's only about the 10th craziest thing in this whole saga, so nobody's talking about it. The Mavs are a few bad seconds against Sacramento away from taking a 5-game winning streak into the All-Star break. I mean, Miami was not at full strength on Thursday night either, but the Mavs, starting a front court of Omax Prosper and Kessler Edwards, they beat the Miami Heat. The Mavs are 2-0 with Kessler Edwards at center. So, go try to explain that one. But yeah, shortly after the game, or they knew it. It emerges shortly after the game that Gafford has a grade 3 MCL sprain, which essentially means a tear. He's most likely gone for the rest of the regular season. Derek Lively's right foot has been fitted for a boot. Anthony Davis, it's a lot of unknowns. I mean, they have no centers right now. The only traditional center on the roster is their recent two-way signing, Kyler Kelly, who, they've used him here in spots, but clearly they feel more comfortable just going the small ball route, which is why that game against Golden State was so fascinating on Wednesday night, because you had two super small teams out there. Like I said, the trade itself is the most shocking trade to me in NBA history. This deadline was the most circus-like deadline in my career, and this was my 32nd trade deadline. I'm never going to forget this one. But in Dallas, the news stuff has just kept happening every day since the trade. It just doesn't seem to end.
Is there, like, in talking to people, what sense of worry do you get for the Mavs for this season? Because they're currently in the 8th seed. You mentioned they got some wins. It's very possible that we could be talking right now, Mark, and they're out of the play-in race. But they got some wins, shorthanded wins, surprised people, myself included. But how long does that last? So is there concern now that, hey, by the time Anthony Davis, it sounds like his timeline's the quickest, potentially the quickest, I should say, potentially the quickest. Is there a concern with the org that it might not matter? Because if we get to late March, the team might be in a position where it's like, hey, how hard do we press this year given all the injuries that have happened?
I mean, the situation they're in is, on one hand, you would think they would say that how hard can we press? We can't risk something seriously long-term happening to Anthony Davis or Lively. We just can't face those risks. But because of the course they took by trading away a 25-year-old Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis in his early 30s when you have Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson here. This is your core. They've got to, they themselves have declared this to be win now, but just looking at the roster tells you they've got to win it all this year. Next year, do you stretch it to a third year? Can they keep the window propped open that long? I mean, and look, Kyrie Irving has played sensational basketball. What he did Wednesday night to,
Yeah.
Golden State has now gotten Jimmy Butler, and the Warriors came in here just riding high after their trade. I mean, Kyrie Irving was the best player on the floor in that game. Absolutely sensational. 42 points and a game-saving charge taken on Jimmy Butler. But before taking last night off, Kyrie Irving had played 40-plus minutes in 5 straight games. He can't keep doing that. But the Mavericks, on a lot of levels, they don't really have an alternative. There is no choice because they have to go for it. Like, they have to win in the next year or two to have any chance of justifying this. They can't rush Anthony Davis. They can't risk anything with him. But they do certainly feel this win now pressure that, frankly, they've imposed on themselves.
It's a crazy situation. We're going to have to see how this plays out. Max Christie has been a bright spot. I mean, it's kind of funny. He's a good player and was almost not even mentioned in the trade, but he's had a nice start. Is that the silver lining and for Mavs fans? And what do you make of him?
Max Christie has been outstanding. I mean, he has, stunned everybody with the way he's just seamlessly come into this team and taken on a larger role and has been terrific. But again, saying things like silver line, like that, like that,
it's a silver lining. It's just a
like,
small little piece of good.
There's I'm not sensing anyone getting too carried away with silver linings. Like I said, this team is playing as hard as it possibly can. Jason Kidd is getting the max out of this group. They should have a 5-game winning streak right now, which is just preposterous, which started with them going into Boston with AD not able to play yet and beating the Celtics. So,
a huge win.
They've really been good here for the last week. But again, silver linings, we are really stretching if we try to use that terminology.
Well, I want to ask you one quick Lakers question about this very trade, because you mentioned how bizarre this whole thing has been and the twists and turns along the way. Well, perhaps the most bizarre one was the trade for Mark Williams that then became rescinded because of medicals, numerous medical red flags that came up when he arrived with the Lakers and went through their physical. But then now it's being protested by Charlotte. Like, what is the status of this? Is this a thing that is still ongoing, or has there been a quiet resolution to this one?
I mean, look, as we tape this, nothing has changed. And I think Charlotte at least has the belief that its case will be heard. But kind of the rumbles that have been circulating suggest that if there is an outside medical entity that backs up the Lakers' view of events here, that the league's going to uphold this. I'll put it like this even better. I haven't talked to anybody yet who really thinks Charlotte has a chance of bringing this trade back to life. Is there some sort of, do they have a Hail Mary way of convincing the league? I mean, I wouldn't rule out anything after what we've just seen over the last weeks. But, this was not even your typical trade being rescinded. The Mavericks had their deal with Philadelphia. They traded for Caleb Martin. They didn't love what they saw in the physical. The Mavericks could have voided that trade, but they, in consultation with the league office, they got Philadelphia to add a second-round pick to the deal, and the Mavericks decided, okay, we know we're going to have to be without Martin here for a period of time before he can make his debut, but they gave us a second-round pick now. We're going to go ahead and do the deal. The Williams trade was thought to be done. I mean, it was very late in the game that the Lakers rescinded it because of what they say they saw in their physicals, their examination, once they actually got Williams to Los Angeles. And the Hornets are arguing, no, they didn't have justification to do so. So, again, I think the league has to at least listen to what Charlotte has to say. but in talking with other executives, people who've been around the league, like I haven't heard anyone say, yeah, the Hornets actually they can get this thing, they can get it they can get the trade back on the table. I mean, that would be wild, and I can't personally off the top of my head remember a situation like that where a trade was kind of rescinded and then restored. And one other
Yeah,
factor,
yeah.
the Lakers hired Dr. Leroy Sims to head their medical staff this season, and he came from the league office. So it's like for Charlotte to be successful, like I said, it's going to be a really high bar for the Hornets to find a way to get this trade. I mean, trades do get rescinded. Rescinded trades getting reinstated again. I'm going to have to
I don't
do
think it's ever
a
happened.
lot to find the last example of that happening, because it does not just pop into my head.
It doesn't pass the smell test for me. That's all I'll say. It seems a little strange how it went down, then it went out. Did nobody know Mark Williams had injury issues, injury concerns? Was it not a red flag? To flag it the way that they did and then bring it back to me, it just seems too bizarre. But I'll save that for Conspiracy Corner, I guess, next week on the All NBA show. He is Marc Stein. Mark, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to get with us today and give us those updates.
Always good to be with you guys. We'll do it again soon.
All right, sounds good. We'll see everybody next time. Hit that like button on the way out.